Good afternoon. This presentation is about capital budgeting, the different types of capital budgeting, and how we can use these measures to determine which project is better for our healthcare organization. Capital budgeting is used by companies to evaluate and determine which projects they should invest in. The different measures used show if the projects that the company is looking to invest in are worth spending cash, resources, etc. Capital budgets are basically a list of projects that are being considered, how much the projects cost, and everything that totals the project. Budgeting decisions are extremely difficult for healthcare managers to make. They must determine where the healthcare organization resources should go. They must also determine if a project is not worth the time and effort, or if it is worth the time and effort. They must communicate with other departments to see what projects or investments they have in mind. The decisions made by these managers can affect the business for a long time because the project can either be beneficial or detrimental to the company. Budgeting helps companies make thorough, informed investment decisions, and companies can develop long-term goals, estimate future cash flows, and control capital expenditures. There are 3 different capital budgeting measures which we will go into. They include payback period, net present value, and internal rate of return. These are the new projects that our healthcare organization is looking into. Option A is implementing a completely new service, while option B is refurbishing a CT scanner. Both of them have to have a minimum return of 12% for our healthcare organization to even consider it. Payback period is the expected number of years required to recover the investment in a project. So payback period basically means the time to break even. One of the downfalls of the payback period is that it does not consider the time value of money, which is why some companies decide to use the discounted payback period. The discounted payback period is the one that most people know about because the normal payback period was used in earlier times. The discounted payback period includes the project's cost of capital in the payback calculations and accounts for the time value of money. Even though the payback period can have some disadvantages, it has always been used in capital investment analysis. It shows that the shorter the payback, the more quickly the funds invested in a project will be available to be used for other projects or purposes. Payback is often used to measure a project's liquidity and risk. This is because it shows that cash flow in the near future are less risky than near-term cash flows. Shorter paybacks are just in general less risky than those with longer paybacks. The payback period is easy to calculate and can be used to compare risk, which is why a lot of people still like to use the normal payback period. In comparing both of Project X and Project Y, Project X will give us a break even at 2.167 years, while Project Y will break even at 3.33 years. This shows the payback period example. You can see that at the 2 years for Project X is right when it will break even, which is why when you use the calculation, you use 2 years and then you divide 500 by 3,000, which gives us the 2.167 years. For the payback period for Project Y, at the 3rd year is when it will break even. The break even shows that right in between year 3 and year 4 is when it goes from negative to positive, which will be that the company will break even, and that will give us a calculation of 3.33 years for the payback period of Project Y. Another capital budgeting measure is net present value. But before I can even talk about net present value, I have to talk about return on investment. Return on investment is the project's expected profitability. The return on the investment is usually measured in dollars or percentage rate of return. Net present value is the dollar return on investment. It is a measure of capital budgeting. It is a return on investment measure that uses discounted cash flow. The net present value is simple. It is the net present value is positive, then the project is expected to be profitable. The higher the net present value, the more profit. If the net present value is 0, then it will break even. And if it is negative, the project is expected to not be profitable at all. Here we can see the formula that is used to calculate the net present value. An advantage of the net present value is that it takes into account that the future dollar is worth less than $1 today. The net present value method takes into consideration cost of capital and the risk of doing projects in the future. Here we show the net present value example of how we calculated everything. This point 12 is the 12% minimum required rate of return. The net present value for project X is $966.05, which means it is positive, so it is profitable. Project Y has negative $887.89, which shows that it is expected to not be profitable at all. The internal rate of return is also a capital budget measure. It is a discounted cash flow return on investment. The internal rate of return measures a project's percentage profitability. It is used to evaluate the attractiveness of a project. If it exceeds a company's required rate of return, then it is desirable. If it is below, it should be rejected. Internal rate of return allows managers to rank projects by overall rates of returns. Internal rate of return does not measure the size of investment, meaning they can favor investments with high rates of returns even if the dollar amount of the return is small. Internal rate of return is best for analyzing venture capital and private equity investments. Here you can see the formula for IRR, which is internal rate of return. A positive net present value means that the internal rate of return is greater than the cost of capital, and then the negative net present value project with an internal rate of return is less than its cost of capital. Basically, the net present value and the internal rate of return go together. If the project is profitable by the net present value, it will be profitable by the internal rate of return. But if two projects, one of them has a higher net present value and the other has a higher internal rate of return, then the net present value method is considered the best measure of profitability. Here we see the internal rate of return example. Using the internal rate of return function on Excel, we see that the project X, we have an internal rate return of 18%, while for project Y, we have 8%, which shows that project X is going to be more profitable. Here is a chart basically summarizing everything with the payback period, the net present value, the internal rate of return, and the profitability index. Project X would seem like the correct answer in whether a new service line should be implemented or refurbish an old CT scanner. The different capital budget measures show that Project X is the correct project that should be implemented. The numbers for Project X are higher, and that is what you want in an investment. Project Y, net present value, is negative, which shows it is an investment that will give net loss. To determine if this was correct, we did another measure, which was the profitability index. The profitability index is a project return on investment which measures the present value of cash inflows divided by the present value of outflows. Basically, according to our book, it means that it's the bang for the buck. The project's profitability index gives even more reassurance, with Project X having a profitability index of 1.098 and Project Y of 0.911. The Project X would get 0.098 cents for every dollar invested, which is not that good, but it's better than Project Y. If a profitability index is under 1, that means that the project is unprofitable. There are some advantages of new services or refurbishing old services. Existing services for new purposes can be more complex but can help healthcare organizations be up to date since healthcare is always changing. Services that change according to healthcare are beneficial to both patients, doctors, and staff. New technology can help the healthcare organization run quicker and more smoothly, such as programs that track patients who meet criteria for rapid readmission or patients who are susceptible to strokes or deep vein thrombosis. New services can use evidence-based medicine to create metrics, protocols, care pathways that can improve patients' experiences and outcomes. New services focus on better quality of care for patients. Old systems can be refurbished, but Project X and Y show how new services can be better and save more money. An old CT scanner is better off getting a new one that has better imaging. It can be more accurate and can give better results for the patient. It's better to spend more money now to get new equipment than spend money to fix something and have to get a new one either way in a couple of months, since technology is always changing. There are some potential risks of new services or refurbishing old services. A healthcare organization has to make sure that the new service provided is beneficial to the population they service. If not, they will end up losing money or will need to advertise to get other patients into the healthcare organization. It is not smart to spend money on a service that will only cost more money in the long run. The service needs to provide excellent care and quality to patients. Some old services need to be removed if they are not providing the best care. Sometimes doctors and staff do not like new services provided and have a hard time customizing to it. For example, some doctors hated having to go from paper charts to electronic health records, even though in the end that was easier, much more effective, and it is easier to share information between doctors. One of the risks of having a new EHR system implemented is that one must think about what would happen if the systems were to get hacked. If the staff do not like the new service that the hospital is implementing, they can lose faith in the vision. But in the end, the healthcare organization really needs to determine if the new service implemented is going to be worth it. Sometimes refurbishing old services is not worth it because you will end up spending more money. At the end, it is always important to remember that patients' care and safety always comes first. Thank you for listening to my presentation on capital budgeting.